Here are the headlines for Friday afternoon, August 23, 2024. Robert F. Kennedy exposes Democratic National Committee corruption. Suspends campaign backs Donald Trump in battleground states. Donald Trump is likely to win the states of Georgia and Pennsylvania in the 2024 presidential election. In Georgia, Trump's chances have improved due to Governor Brian Kemp's powerful statewide machine, which will give Trump an advantage of 4 points or more. In Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris made a huge mistake by selecting Tim Walz as her running mate instead of Josh Shapiro, who is popular among Jewish voters in the state. The exit of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from the race and his possible endorsement of Trump may also benefit Trump in Pennsylvania. A flawed idea. Cable news network's Joe Kernan destroys Elizabeth Warren on live television over price gouging policy. Senator Elizabeth Warren clashed with CNBC host Joe Kernan over the Democrats' proposal to impose a federal ban on so-called price gouging. Kernan argued that artificially controlling prices does not work and is a flawed idea, citing examples of how competition does not come in when prices are held down. Warren countered that states like Texas and Florida already have price gouging laws, which she claimed are different from price control policies. The debate became heated, with Kernan calling out Warren for misleading claims and pointing out the absurdity of suggesting that companies did not know how to price gouge until President Biden was elected. Powell vows to cut rates with stocks, home prices, rents, and food at all-time highs. The Federal Reserve has completed its tightening cycle and is now launching an easing cycle, despite inflation still at 3% and prices for stocks, homes, and food at all-time highs. This move is seen as unusual, as the Fed will be cutting rates with the economy at a high point, potentially creating a bubble that could burst spectacularly. The decision may be influenced by the upcoming elections, as the establishment candidate would not want to deal with a market crash. However, this easing cycle could lead to increased prices for housing, food, and other goods, ultimately sowing the seeds of the next inflationary bubble. End of hoaxes. Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and the Democrats' lurking terror. The Democratic Party is attempting to cover up the potential consequences of losing the election, including the possibility that hundreds of high officials might have to pay for their crimes committed in recent years. The party is focused on gaslighting the country into believing that Donald Trump has been president for the past 4 years and Kamala Harris has been an innocent bystander. They are lying about everything and working hard to construct false narratives, including inventing a record for Kamala Harris, since they cannot run on her actual record. Rand Paul asks why Transportation Security Administration is using terror watch lists to spy on Americans based on their political views. Senator Rand Paul has written to the Transportation Security Administration asking for answers about why the agency appears to be using terrorist watch lists to surveil Americans based on their political opinions. Paul cited recent revelations that former Democratic Representative Tulsi Gabbard and a woman married to a federal air marshal whistleblower were placed on the Quiet Skies Program watch list and subjected to enhanced surveillance after expressing conservative views or attending a Donald Trump speech. The senator has requested all documentation relating to the procedure of adding people to the Quiet Skies program, citing concerns about insufficient oversight and inadequate safeguards to protect against the misuse of passenger data. Hungary again breaks with West. Ukrainian attack on Kursk is wrong. Hungary's government has broken ranks with its North Atlantic Treaty Organization and ATO and European Union EU allies by condemning Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's top advisor, Gergely Gulyás, stated that Ukraine is not only defending but also attacking and called for a ceasefire and peace. Gulyás emphasized that Hungary is against anything that thwarts potential diplomatic settlement to the war, citing the spillover of hostilities into Russian territory as an example. The comments come as other European leaders, such as EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell, have reiterated support for Ukraine's fight, while Italy's defense minister Guido Crosetto has also expressed concerns over the conflict escalating into Russian territory. 10 years after Proposition 47, California goes full circle and starts fighting retail crime. California has passed a package of 10 bills to combat organized retail crime, which has surged since the state reclassified felony theft offenses as misdemeanors in 2014. The new laws focus on online marketplaces, repeat offenders, and cargo theft, giving law enforcement and prosecutors more authority to tackle property theft and damage. Retailers who had been fleeing California due to rising crime rates worked collaboratively with lawmakers to develop the legislation, which aims to provide consequences for retail theft without resorting to mass incarceration. The laws do not go as far as a proposed referendum that would stiffen penalties for retail theft, but are seen as a step towards addressing the issue. Pedophile arrested for death threats against Donald Trump during Arizona border visit. Arizona authorities arrested Ronald Lee Sivrud, a 66-year-old man from Benson, Arizona, for allegedly making death threats against former President Donald Trump on social media. The arrest occurred while Trump was visiting the U.S.-Mexico border wall in Cochise County, Arizona, and was unaware of the ongoing manhunt. Sivrud faces 2 counts of threatening and a felony warrant for failure to register as a sex offender. New home sales suddenly soared in July. Prices jumped as mortgage rates tumbled. New home sales in the United States soared by 10.6% month over month in July, far exceeding expectations and marking the largest increase since August 2022. This surge pushed new home sales up 5.6% year over year and lifted the seasonally adjusted annual rate to 739,000, its highest level since May 2023. The pickup in sales allowed builders to make a dent in inventory last month, which fell to the lowest level since the start of the year, although it remains near the highest level since 2008. India's Modi urges Zelensky to the negotiating table in historic first Ukraine visit becomes India's Modi urges Zelensky to the negotiating table in historic first visit to Ukraine. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev to urge peaceful settlement of the war between Ukraine and Russia. This marks the first time an Indian Prime Minister has visited Ukraine since 1991. Modi emphasized that no problem can be solved on the battlefield and offered India's help in mediating peace, while Zelensky agreed that the visit is very friendly and important for all Ukrainians. The two leaders signed 4 agreements, including cooperation in healthcare, agriculture, humanitarian relations, and culture, and discussed strengthening trade and military technical ties between their countries, reiterating the red flags in the latest retail sales report. The United States economy may be in trouble despite recent retail sales reports, suggesting a resilient consumer. However, upon closer examination of the data, several red flags emerge, including downward revisions to previous month's numbers, questionable seasonal adjustments that may be painting an overly rosy picture, and rising delinquency rates on credit cards and auto loans. Additionally, using a 12-month average of non-seasonally adjusted retail sales data reveals a more subdued picture of consumer spending, which has been virtually flat since 2021. This could have far-reaching implications for the broader economy, including potential layoffs, revenue declines for retailers, and higher loan losses for banks and financial institutions. America's power grid adds most generating capacity in 21 years as artificial intelligence data center demand surges. Developers and power plant owners added 20.2 gigawatts in new capacity in the first half of 2024, a 21% year-over-year rise driven by increasing demand from artificial intelligence data centers, reshoring trends, and other electrification trends. Solar power led the way with 12 gigawatts, while battery storage capacity also saw significant growth with around 21% of the gains. The Energy Information Administration forecasts that utility-scale electric generating capacity will more than double in the second half of 2024 to about 42.6 gigawatts. This trend is expected to continue as large-scale artificial intelligence and cloud computing capacity drive a resurgence in demand, with many companies committed to zero-emission pledges investing in renewable power generation and storage capacity. Gaslighting Associated Press touts Chicago's mostly peaceful Democratic National Convention riots. Social media says otherwise. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago has been marred by unrest and violence, including clashes between police and protesters, flag burnings, bomb threats, and bloody assaults. The Associated Press reported that the protests were largely peaceful, but social media accounts told a different story, with many criticizing the mainstream media for downplaying the violence. The convention has also seen pro-Palestinian demonstrations, which have resulted in arrests and injuries. The European Central Bank's trouble. The European Central Bank is expected to reevaluate its monetary policy in September, with some market participants pricing in the possibility of back-to-back rate reduction. The latest wage data showed that Euro area negotiated wages rose by 3.55% year over year in the second quarter, a sharp decline from the 4.7% recorded in the first quarter. However, absent a sharp increase in labor productivity, the annual growth rate of negotiated wages is still inconsistent with price stability, and companies may be expanding their profit margins somewhat again. The ECB's governing council remains cautious, and concerns about the efficacy of its monetary policy may not scream rapid rate cuts. Study exposes the myth of Federal Reserve independence. Professor Thomas J. Webster at Pace University Lubin School of Business argues that the Federal Reserve's independence is a myth and instead has a captive relationship with the United States government, similar to Stockholm Syndrome. Webster claims that the Fed prioritizes enabling government borrowing and spending over maintaining price stability, essentially driving the massive welfare warfare state. The central bank achieves this through quantitative easing, where it purchases newly issued Treasury securities at below-market interest rates, passing on the increased financial burden to households in the form of higher prices. Webster cites empirical evidence from the pandemic era, showing that the Fed was more concerned with funding federal government deficits than with maintaining price stability, and concludes that the Fed is just another politically co-opted agency of the federal government. Uranium stocks rise after world's largest producer cuts 2025 output forecast. Kazatomprom, the world's largest uranium producer, has announced a cut in its 2025 production forecast due to project delays and sulphuric acid shortages, raising concerns among Wall Street analysts about a potential uranium supply squeeze that could send prices higher. The Kazakh company revealed that its production target for next year will be 17% lower, to the range of 25,000 to 26,500 tons of uranium. Analysts at Canaccord Genuity forecast Kazatomprom's production will be around 23,000 tons in 2025, adding that next year's theme in the uranium market will be tight. A tight uranium supply theme rolling into 2025 could pressure prices higher. Who is left to buy? The S&P 500 stock market index dropped an average of 7.5% in the next 3 months after Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell delivered speeches at Jackson Hole in Wyoming for 5 out of 6 years. With Global Wealth Investment Management private client allocation at 62% and S&P 500 corporate cash just 8.8% of assets, some see this as a bearish sign indicating that there may be few remaining buyers to support the market. Kirby yet again cites progress on Gaza talks with Central Intelligence Agency's Burns and Cairo. The White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby reported progress in Cairo truce talks between Israel and Hamas, describing the early signs as constructive. Despite this optimism, the reality is that the warring sides do not appear closer to a peace agreement. A joint statement from Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad confirmed they will reject any agreement without an Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. The presence of CIA Chief William Burns at the talks has not changed anything, with some analysts suggesting that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's recent efforts did more harm than good by projecting a positive image for domestic purposes. Sam Scare, correlation concern, and curve disinversion, Goldman macro trader ponders the market's main worries. Central banks easing or tightening? Central banks are tightening monetary policies as growth is accelerating, while inflation is moving higher. In contrast to the previous view of central banks easing due to slowing economic growth and deflationary pressures, it appears that they will now need to tighten their belts to keep up with rising prices and a rapidly expanding economy.